Hello and welcome to the Life They Live podcast. I'm the host, Nina, and today I'm recording a short episode to introduce you to season 2 of the podcast. So don't hesitate to share the love on Apple Podcasts, leave a review or a comment on YouTube, or just subscribe to me on the different platforms YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram. That would make me happy and that would also help to grow the podcast. It's now going to turn 2 years old, so it's still a baby podcast, but I'm very happy to continue and to share with you stories of passionate guests. So why am I recording this short episode today? This is a bonus. It's not like the normal episodes. Um, because I want to introduce myself a little bit for the ones who do not know me, and I also want to explain what's going to be new this season. There are going to be some modifications, as you may see, depending on which platform you are using to listen to this episode. I will now offer the option to watch videos, to watch the podcast episodes and not just hear them. Yes, if you go on YouTube, you will now have access to video formats of the episodes, so you will be able to watch the episodes and not only listen to them. So I thought this would be nice for the ones who prefer to watch episodes instead of listening to them. Let me know in the comments or let me know on Instagram if you're happy that I added this new feature. I know that for some people it's nicer to also watch. So I thought that would be a nice little modification to make for this new season. It's going to be a bit of work for me because I have to learn how to edit videos now and not just audios. So I'm going to do my best. I want to offer the best quality possible. At the moment, I'm still experimenting a little bit with the different softwares, but I hope that in a bit I will be able to offer the best I can give basically in terms of video quality. So that is one of the main new changes for this season 2. But before I share more with you, I'm just going to introduce myself very quickly for the ones who don't know me or for the ones who would like to know a bit more. My name is Nina. I'm French. I was born in France, but I left when I was 8 years old, and I then lived in Mexico, the United States, Germany. Now I live in the Netherlands. So that's a little bit more about me. You will notice that I really like on this podcast to interview guests from all over the world. I find that really valuable. And I just graduated actually. So I just finished my bachelor. I majored in global public health. So now I'm doing half a gap year because I graduated. Well, I still don't have my diploma, but we're going to say that I graduated in January, and I plan to start a master in September. So now that leaves me half a gap year. So I really want to take that opportunity to also work more on the podcast and be more consistent, because that's really one of my goals for this new year. What else can I tell you? Well, in terms of health, my areas of interest are nutrition, psychology, geriatry. I have others, of course, but these are the main ones. So it's most likely that my master will be related to these fields. I think it will probably in psychology, but I haven't applied yet, so I don't even know myself. I will keep you updated once that happens. So even though the podcast addresses a wide range of topics, you will notice that recurrent ones include health, traveling, and art, because those are simply topics that I like. So obviously, there will be more of these topics, but my goal with the podcast is to learn more about topics that I'm unfamiliar with. So it's really not restricted to only those fields. I'm just saying that that's what I have a personal interest in. And now that I'm talking about the podcast, I think that's it for my little introduction. It was very short, but if you have any other questions, you can ask them on Instagram and I would be happy to answer them. So now that gives a little nice transition, because I just talked about the topics that are addressed on this podcast. And actually, you may have noticed that these past weeks I wasn't very active. And it may seem that I was not working on the podcast so much because I didn't publish any new episodes. But actually, it was the opposite. I was working on the podcast a lot, but more on the background, so what you don't see. For a few months, I was really reflecting on the concept of the podcast because it's quite broad and I wanted to define it a little bit more. So don't get me wrong, I like the fact that it's broad. It was actually a choice, a decision I made. When I started the podcast, a year ago, I watched a lot of videos to, educate myself and have a better understanding of how to make a podcast. And a lot of people were advising to really have a niche and stick to a specific topic because that helps to grow the podcast. I thought about it for a while and I decided that the main reason I'm doing this podcast is really to learn personally. Like I want to learn, I want to have conversations that make me grow, I want to gain knowledge, and of course the reason I'm sharing it with you is because I also want you to learn alongside me. So it was a bit complicated for me to restrict myself to one area, let's say health, for example. Obviously, even when you like, find a niche and focus on one topic, it doesn't mean that you can't address a broad range of, subjects. But for me, I didn't want to restrict myself too much because I wanted to keep the opportunity to talk about, any topics. So that's why I kept a broad podcast, we may say. But even though I'm happy at the moment, at least it may change in the future, but now I'm happy that it's about passions, but not related to any specific topic, just passions in general. I still wanted to define it a little bit more, shape the concept a little bit, if we may say. So I've been lucky to get help from my family, my friends, my boyfriend. They had very long conversations with me and they gave me valuable advice. I also received help from a podcast coach called Christine O'Donnell, sorry. She is the founder of Bright-Sided podcast, and which is a podcast consulting and production house. So if you need help with your podcast, you can also contact her. So yeah, thanks to the help of all of these people, I was able to think about the concept of the podcast a bit more because I had a lot of ideas, but they were a bit disorganized. So I needed help to see more clearly. And I can now tell you that I decided to also add the component of wellness and focus a bit more on that. For the ones who are new to this podcast, this is a podcast about passions. In each episode, I interview a guest on their passion. And I'm now adding the component of health, wellness, because as I told you, I'm personally very interested in any health-related topic. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. What does it mean? Basically, in every episode, the guest is not only going to share their passion, but they're also going to share how their passion helps them improve their well-being, their mental wellness, or their health in general. So it's going to be different, obviously, for each guest. They have their own personal story. Because I truly believe that passions can help you overcome fears. If you're passionate about something, it can really help you to overcome your fears, to be more positive. So that's the message I want to share. And in each episode, the guest will share their passions as well as the benefits that their passion can have on health. So it can be from a personal standpoint. They can talk about how personally their passions helped them, but they can also just talk in a more general way how they think their passion can be beneficial to others. I hope that's clear. I hope that makes sense. So yeah, it's still broad. Passions can still be about any topic, but I just want to really incorporate that health element to it. And I also want to clarify the goal when you're listening to an episode is not to tell you, okay, you should follow that passion and you should, try the same passion as the guest. That's not the goal. You might listen to an episode and think, okay, that's not a passion I'm necessarily interested in, but that's okay. The main message is that you can hear an inspiring story, and even if you don't share the same passion as the guest, you can get valuable advice from them. You can learn from their mindset. Maybe you can be inspired by their life story, or you might want to try this passion later on. That's also possibility. But really, the main goal of the podcast is to learn together about different passions, and to be inspired to live our life the way we want to be more positive and to overcome our fears. So I hope that's clear. I hope you're as excited as I am. Let me know if you have any questions. I will be happy to answer them. So that's what I've been doing these past weeks. I've been defining my concept a bit more. Like I said, it's still staying broad because that's what I want, at least at the moment. But I want to address health topics a bit more. So I think that's clear now, but you can tell me if it was not. So that's one of the main changes this season 2, is really the health wellness element. And the next one, I already told you about it, actually, it's the fact that you now have access to videos. You can watch the episodes and not only listen to them. I think that's also a big change for season 2. Yeah, those are basically the main 2 changes. There's gonna be other ones, but these I will talk to you about them as we go through the season. I also really want to be more active on social media, create more content that I can share with you on social media. Social media, is a whole other world that I'm unfamiliar with, to be honest. And I also wanted to talk about the help I received when it comes to my social media. Like I just told you, I'm not very familiar with social media and I don't know so many strategies. So I'm very grateful that I received help from a French consulting agency that is called Agence Grape. And they helped me to find a strategy for my social media platforms. And we talked about anything related to social media, and they gave me advice to grow my podcast. If you also need help in that area, then I would also recommend to check them out. I will leave links obviously in the description. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to thank all the people that have helped me grow this podcast. And also I also thank my guests, obviously, my guests that were on the podcast this first season. They really trusted the process because the podcast, when it started, well, obviously it was completely new. So I'm very thankful that they gave me their trust and that they followed me in this adventure. So I think that's it. As I told you, I wanted to do a pretty short episode. I told you a little bit more about myself. I'll also introduce season 2. I hope now you can see a bit more clearly what's new, what's gonna come. I'm excited to already tell you that there are guests coming up very soon, so be ready for that. If you want to know more about the upcoming guests, I recommend you to follow me on Instagram, as I will share more information over there. The Instagram of the podcast is _podcast. I'm looking forward to meet you again on the first actual episode of the season, so the first episode with a guest. I hope you have a great day and I will see you soon.